Welcome. This is the Health and Wellness Coach Journal podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Jessica Singh, the founder and CEO of the Center for Health and Wellness Coaches. This is a podcast for coaches to explore topics related to health, wellness, and coaching, sharing knowledge and sharing light. In this episode of the Health and Wellness Coach Journal, I have the pleasure of speaking with Michelle Rockwood. Michelle has sold real estate in one of the world's wealthiest communities, served in the U.S. Peace Corps, and once raised $1 million for charity over a single lunch. Now a personal coach and a widely recognized sales expert, she has helped hundreds of heart-centered coaches discover sales methods that feel fantastic, transforming their businesses and their lives. Michelle founded Unscripted Sales, a sales training and coaching company serving sales teams and entrepreneurs. She has more than 15 years of experience and specializes in helping coaching programs teach their clients, coaches in training, how to create client-coach partnerships and sell their coaching. After personally hosting over 1,000 sales conversations and shifting entire sales teams into life-changing revenues, Michelle wrote her new book, Joyful Selling, to share her knowledge with all the loving, heart-centered coaches our world so desperately needs. Welcome. It's an honor to be here with you, Michelle.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited for our talk today.
Same here. Just to get to know you, how did you decide to become a sales coach?
Well, like all good things, I think maybe it happened on accident. And of course, I never set out to teach sales, and I never set out to teach life coaches, of all people, the sales conversations specifically. But I was working for a coach training company as what we call a high ticket closer, which is kind of a silly name for a sales representative. And the owner of the company asked me to stand up and speak at one of their live events for just about 10 minutes. She said, "Hey, can I ask you a few questions?" Well, I'm so nervous about public speaking that I was up, I kid you not, for 3 days straight. I could not sleep. The last night I had to take some sleeping medicine to get myself to bed. But those 10 minutes were so glorious, and they actually turned into 45 minutes. And there was a line out the door. Coaches were staying in from their lunch hour during the event to talk to me. And the owner of the company yelled across the room, "Michelle, you're coming back every year." And I did. So for the next 4 years, I came back and I taught coaches in training and now entrepreneurs in general how to sell their services in a way that really aligns with how they work, their core values, their ethics, their training as a coach, and so on. So it's just a way that feels amazing and works.
That resonates so well because most of the reason, at least in health and wellness coaching that I've seen or life coaching, that people transition to become coaches in the first place is to align their work with their core values. So then your work and having the sales component be part of it, having that extra element of serving and alignment, so powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. And when the sales conversation is so similar to the work you're already doing, it's not something different than or separate from. It really becomes that first beautiful interaction with your clients and sets you up for success. So being able to help coaches and any entrepreneurs really understand that, as opposed to oftentimes we feel like we have to fit ourselves into somebody else's idea or somebody else's box as to what sales should look and feel like, and it just doesn't feel good, and it doesn't have to be that way. So
I think you just summed up burnout in so many industries across the board. But yeah, so powerful when there's that lack of alignment between what you think you have to be in order to succeed and who we are.
Yeah, and that burnout with sales comes really fast. And how you show up on that next sales call, what happened in the last meeting matters, and it really impacts you. So always making sure that you set yourself up for success really physically first before anything even comes out of your mouth and anything you share with your client, just as any health or wellness practitioner does, to really get yourself grounded and centered and ready to connect.
I was also, just so excited and grateful to you and for your work and just how generously you share the knowledge and the great experiences that you've had. For anyone who has not yet read Joyful Selling, highly recommend it. Michelle, would you mind just summarizing what is the core message of your book?
Yeah, well, the book is called Joyful Selling: A Better Way to Yes for Heart-Centered Coaches. And I really think a better way to yes sums it up, because there are so many ways to sell, and none are right or wrong specifically, but there's a right way for you. And so really helping practitioners understand that there is a right way for them, and how do we find it? What does it look like? I give an idea of what that can feel like, and how you can start creating a better way to yes, a way that feels amazing, serves the client, serves you financially, helps the clients, all of those things. So yeah, the book is really my love letter to sales and my gift in a way. I didn't know when I wrote it how long I would be doing this, and if this is something I wanted to keep doing forever and ever. And I wanted to make sure that my work didn't die with me and that it really lived on, because so often the best of us, heart-centered coaches, heart-centered health and wellness practitioners, massage therapists, yoga teachers, they're the best of the society. And we want to uplift these individuals, help them to make money, because everyone wins when the best of us can sell in a way that feels amazing. So that's my mission in life, to help the best of us, the core people who are such good people, to realize that they actually make amazing salespeople as well.
Going straight to the heart. And I know, I guess,
Yeah.
is that in part of how you define a heart-centered coach?
I know I always say, like, I can't teach anyone how to sell, but I can teach somebody who cares how to sell. And you can't make someone care. So when you have that heart, when you have that true desire to help somebody and do what's best for the client, I always teach it's not about coming to the call to get a yes. Already when you say that and your goal is to get somebody to a yes, words like manipulation, trickery, persuasion, those types of things come into your mind, and that doesn't feel good. But when you start to think about, I care about this other person, I see them, and I am a heart-centered practitioner, I live and work guided by my core values, by my North Star, that's heart-centered sales. When we're looking out for the best for that person first, and we're an option to work with, we're not the only option. But this is a way. And if it's the right way and it feels good, absolutely, we're going to help them to see what it looks like and what it feels like to work with us, and to step into our container of support, our program, our work with ease. So truly, heart-centered is somebody who gives a darn. They truly care about the other person in front of them and the bigger picture.
I love the heart center, the holistic approach, whole being approach of both the client and the coach in this, and that you talk about. And you had mentioned the North Star just now. And one of the things I love also about your book is how you incorporate energy when you talk about masculine versus feminine energy. And I had a few ahas when I was reading this. And every time I remind myself not to chase, and just when you relax and pull back, things have a way of coming to us and aligning, as you mentioned, without an agenda, so to speak.
Yes, absolutely. And as coaches, we believe fundamentally that the client knows what's inherently best for them, and that they're capable and that they're whole. And so when we operate from that principle, we believe that they're capable of making a decision for themselves. They don't need us to push them or move them forward or pull them or scare them. But it is our job to ask the tough questions. It is our job to shine a light in places that they might not have looked before. And that's really, really powerful. And really doing that in a way where they can see for themselves when they're ready at the right time in that conversation or after, that always feels good. And that helps the client to step forward and have more success when they've had that intrinsic motivation to make the change and they've said, yes, I'm ready, versus fine, I'll go. The success rate is going to be through the roof with your coaching or whatever it is that you're working on together.
Because they're already perceiving that future and creating that space within holding the intention.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
And I know in your book you distinguish between feminine and masculine sales. you could just explain a little bit more about how, I know you said there's no right way to sales, and that's true. It's what aligns with you. But just what about the
Yeah,
feminine sales makes it so powerful?
sure, sure. Well, I had a sales coach, and I tell this story in the book. And we were on a call, and I was talking about all these things and the clients and stuff. And she said, Michelle, you have a real masculine sales energy. And my whole body got hot all over from head to toe. And I thought, is she insulting me? Is this a compliment? What does that even mean? And I asked her to explain. I said, tell me more. And she said, Michelle, you're taking calls at all hours of the day whenever it works for the client. You're chasing clients. You are cutting prices just to make the sale. And I thought to myself, wow, you're so right. These are the things about sales that don't feel good. And then I thought, well, what is a more feminine approach to sales? What would be a feminine approach? And that's holding fierce boundaries. That's only taking calls at times that work for me. That's saying no to clients. We call it the gentle release, releasing them on the sales call when you can just tell in your heart that it's not a good fit for either of you. And you can lovingly send them off or give them the next resource and move forward in loving service of the client. So, feminine energy is, yeah, really thinking about tapping into the feminist goddess you are. And this is good for both sexes or however you identify. It's not about man versus woman. It's about reframing how we think about sales, how we think about connecting to that other person on the other end of the line, and that being so important that they feel seen, heard, cared for, not just another number. And that's our primary role as a sales professional.
I'm just processing. You just shared so many insights. Yes, to have them feel heard, be present, to that way know if we can truly help them in the way they want to be helped and in a way that aligns with us.
A sales call should feel like a warm hug. You should remember it. I literally remember I actually took sales calls when I first started in my minivan. I still have the same minivan, the doors open on both sides. It's very exciting to me. But I would actually park in my kiddo's preschool parking lot. And I would have 4 hours a day, and he would go to his little Montessori class. And I didn't have time to drive home. And so I would literally sit in my car, and I thought I was just really beating the system. I thought this was really luxurious. And I remember to this day the clients that I enrolled, where I was in, what parking space I was in, and what came as a result of that. So these conversations are so special, and they're important because coaching is life-changing. And I suspect it has changed your life dramatically. It has changed my life so dramatically, so powerful, not only in my business, but as a parent, as a spouse, as a coworker, how I talk to myself. Actually, I would say that's even the most important. And so if we can't serve and support a client on that sales call, they might miss out on coaching forever. So it's about more than us. We're representing coaching itself. That's our due diligence to be able to host a sales conversation, a powerful one, just like it's our job to learn how to host a powerful coaching call and to be a good coach and to get those hours in and to practice, because this is bigger than us, and it's very important that we represent and we help the person to step into what may be, you have no idea, especially if you're a new coach listening in on this, what your clients are going to do as a result of working with you. Even in a $500 program, even in a $1,500, $2,000, $5,000 program, even when you take, we call the activation fee, the crazy things that people will do to change their lives just because they hired a coach will blow your mind. So it's a very exciting business to be in because it's dramatic. I love drama. And so marriages, deaths, births, it's amazing.
I love that what you were saying, the power of literally one conversation to have a life, let alone imagine what a coaching relationship over time can do.
Absolutely. Yes. And then just to wing it, No, don't just wing it. Don't just hope for the best. Don't just have a nice conversation. Don't just think, oh, because I'm a good coach, it's going to go okay. Practice, learn a framework. Yeah, that feels good to you. Find someone who's aligned with your core values and always push away what's not. Nothing I say is 100% going to align with you, but how can you make it your own? And how can you say it in a way that feels good to you? Or take one concept. We teach something in my programs called price anchoring. And that's really where you help somebody to understand the bigger picture of what coaching is. And I give some examples, but they don't always feel good to everyone. It doesn't always feel true or quite right. And so we help them think through what feels right to them. And so there's always a way to take this concept of, say, price anchoring and use it in a call that resonates and works for you. Just like you do in coaching. You don't use all the techniques or everything that was taught to you. You use your favorite ones and you take what serves you and you leave the rest.
It sounds revolutionary. Like sometimes profound ideas are like the most simple and straightforward. And the fact how you've been able to utilize coaching, and I know your book also incorporates the ICF competencies, which is incredible. Your sales method
Yeah.
does. And the fact that you're approaching how you teach coaches to do that as a coaching call, where exactly like you said, the client leads, coach follows, and provides the space for transformation and discovery. When I read your book, I just was so like, wow, this should be part of coach training. And it doesn't matter if I'm going to be an entrepreneur or not. It doesn't matter if I'm going to work as a coach in an organization or not. It doesn't matter if I'm a health and wellness coach or not. As long as I am any coach, this is like the basic foundation for an intake structure, or just even explaining what the coaching process is and all the competencies we're supposed to do at the beginning of a relationship. So I thought it was really amazing how you incorporated all of that with sales. That was very powerful learning.
Yes, when I was I've taken 3 coach training programs, one that was ICF certified. And when I was in that coach training, every time the teacher would teach a new core competency, I was like, oh my God, do you know where you do that in a sales call? That's like the first section. Or I'd be like, that's the end of a sales call. And I would just be freaking out on everybody all the time. And they'd be like, oh, what is she talking about? God, that girl again, here she goes. But I was so excited. I was like, this is what I have done. This is just fantastic, thought-provoking inquiry, self-reflection, holding a container of support for a client, releasing, I mean, it's all there. And so what's neat about that, like the one that's kind of very obvious to teach is the establish and maintain agreements. And that's one of the core competencies that the ICF teaches for the 8 ICF core competencies. And most of them don't match up so perfectly. But this is what you do at the beginning of every single coaching call is you get into rapport, you talk to the client, hey, what are you doing here? What are you hoping to achieve? You agree as to what's going to take place during the conversation. You create that little container of support. And the client, you literally see their shoulders relax, they settle in. You've laid out a roadmap for what they can expect during your time together. And when I share with ICF coaches, that's what you do at the beginning of a sales call. Oh, there's like, and it's so simple. I literally can explain that in 2 sentences. Like, do that in what you do in a coaching call at the beginning of a sales call. Like, that's it, So it's like that simplicity, but it just keeps getting more and more rich, right? Evoke awareness. Like, where does that go in a sales call? How does it look different? And it's always more coach led in a sales call than it would be in a coaching call for sure. But as much as possible, you're trying to let the client lead. And in fact, the better you get at coaching, I'm thinking you would agree with this, the less you say. And the more you're just able to ask those thoughtful questions. Well, that's the same on a sales call. I now say very little and just kind of move the client right down the road and the roadmap that we've laid out together. So yeah, it's so much fun. It's so fun.
With your work with the coach training schools that you work with and the coaches that you've seen, what are the biggest gaps you see that your work is able to fill for them?
Well, what you mentioned right there is this isn't being taught in many coach training programs. And that is actually because the misnomer that coaches need to be certified or need to be proficient at coaching before they go out and sell. And we really want to learn the sales conversation in tandem with the coaching conversation. We want to start learning the coaching conversation, then probably 2 or 3 months in, learn the sales conversation. Otherwise, that gap becomes too big and it is harder to come back to and reintroduce. But when you're taught from the beginning that the way you sell coaching is the lane over from the coaching conversation, then it's really easy for a coach to pick up. I mean, if you just think about graduating college even, and then trying to integrate in something else, it's a lot harder than when you were in it. Do you remember when you did your first coach training program and there is just this fire in you and it's like this rebirth and suddenly you think you can do anything? It's like this crazy thing that overcomes you. And having that support and your fellow coaches rooting you on to go make those first offers and bring a client through a container of support, yes, is just incredible. And I actually saw this firsthand. So I was working in a coach training program for 5 years as faculty, and I would teach those students, and about 40% would sell thousands of dollars of programs. One girl, she sold $20,000 program before she graduated. We were all like, what? And they would just do amazing because when they realize that they're already brilliant, maybe they're a massage therapist, a personal trainer, they can integrate coaching into what they're already doing or just offer even whatever they're offering right now differently, they just soar. So I really see that as the gap. And I understand why coach training programs are hesitant to teach sales. And that's because they don't realize that fundamentally everybody needs the sales conversation, but marketing, that's different. And so we want to learn the sales conversation first and sell, I always say, to our first 5 clients at about $1,500, a 3-month container of support. And then you want to think about marketing. It just doesn't make sense to go out there and to start trying to get clients because the very first time you get somebody on a phone call, you're not going to be able to enroll them. You're going to feel sad and go out and do it again. And what's really neat is that your sales conversations and you bringing your first client, even if it's a beta and you're doing it half price through, let's say, a 3-month container of support, which we can talk about what that is. Now you're not selling air, right? You're not selling the idea. You're going, this is amazing. I've experienced not only for myself, but I've brought clients through. Now that is authentic. You're speaking from a true place of experience, and that feels really good as well.
Mm-hmm. And I love that in the book too, you had mentioned the deep inner work with it, because when you have the sales conversation, you have to be very comfortable. This is one of the challenges I realized at the beginning of becoming a coach is, okay, I love to do this. Like you mentioned, that fire, that passion,
Yes.
tell the whole world. But then wait a second, what am I telling? And who am I? Like, what am I representing? So having that deep inner work, there's no way around it.
Yeah, yes. No, you're so right. And that's another reason why you want to do this at the same time as coach training, because you're so into doing this inner work, right? And it fades a little bit, all that inner work, but you come through the other side. But what you're talking about that we mentioned in the book too, specifically around the inner work of sales, is, for one example, is getting right with money. And it's not actually about getting right with money per se, but it's observing what your money story is so that you're not bringing that to the sales conversation. You're allowing the client to be there by themselves without your stuff, just like we do in a coaching call. We make sure to take what's ours, set it aside, and be fully present for the client. So I do give some exercises that have been really powerful to me, to my clients and students, to start to talk to money differently, think about money differently. Even for me, it changed how I talk to my children about money. I never say we can't afford it. I say we choose not to purchase that today. And you start to shift their narrative already when they're little. You start to shift your own narrative in your head. It's not that I can't afford it. I choose not to purchase that today because we're getting braces, or whatever it is. Like I'm consciously choosing. to make that decision. So yeah, the inner work is so important. And there's more with that too with your spouse, because you'll get those a lot. And what's always really neat, and I loved when I was first coaching a sales team, is the objection that the coach would get was often their own stuff. And I thought to myself, like, that is so woo. And like the old me would be like, that is crazy talk. But time and time again, if they were getting the spouse objection, it was that they had a thing with the spouse. And it wasn't always the same thing, but it was just a little something where in their voice, they would say, you need to talk to your spouse, don't you? Even if they didn't really say it, there was some kind of nuance push that way subconsciously that they would do on a sales call. So when we can help them start to think about how they ask, and I actually did this for myself, is really start to think about how I ask for support. When women, we do this a lot. We ask for permission versus support. And that looks like, can I do this? Not, I'm going to do this. Can you help me figure out how to make this work? So just those little subtleties in how we ask for support. I've made a decision. What do you think as far as your support goes versus, do you think I can do this? Do you think this will work? And just really empowering us to think differently in these situations. It's so life-changing.
And a coaching technique, again, being aware of the self-talk and reframing.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yes. And shifting.
Yeah, that little shift in what you say. Like I'm working with a parenting coach right now, and she teaches to say, like the kids say, oh, I'm not good at math yet. And we just had that like little word, yet. Oh, I'm not good at soccer yet. This little teeny tiny reframe, and these small little things can make such a big difference.
I love the yet, because one of the biggest takeaways from the book also was, like you mentioned, in order to get ICF certified for any certification, you need practice hours and coaching logs. But at the same point in time, having an N of 1 for a sales call that maybe didn't go the way you wanted has no representation on the future at all, or who you are as a person, right? It really requires, again, a lot of that inner work, reflection, and practice, as you mentioned. So it's key.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing all this valuable insight and all these rich pearls of wisdom with me today.
Yeah, my pleasure.
And for listeners today, for coaches, health and wellness, or healthcare providers and other professionals listening to this, what is one thing you would tell them to take away from this?
I'll teach all of these things, and go, okay, this, and this. And I'll say, if you remember anything, I really invite you to sit down before a sales conversation, put both feet on the floor, close your eyes, and think about that other person. And think, how do I want them to feel when I say hello? How do I want them to feel as they go through the sales journey with me? What do I want their jaw, their shoulders, their heart? What do I want their breath to be like? And whether or not we ever work together, what kind of an impression or feeling do I when they think back at our time together? And when you operate from this place, you just can't go wrong. You just can't. And it feels so good every time. And I love this concept of really thinking about how I want that other person to feel in all aspects of my life before I say anything. Every chapter I wrote, I sat down and I said, I want them to feel seen. I want them to feel understood. What am I trying to do here? And really, when you do that, you cannot go wrong. So that would be the number one thing. Think about how you want that person to feel.
Really putting yourself in the hat and sharing that, embracing the universal human experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Michelle. This has been great. I will put the information for your book and how to connect with you so everyone who wants to learn more from Michelle can get in touch with you.
Thank you so much for having me. This is wonderful.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you for listening. I appreciate you and value your feedback, so please subscribe and write a constructive review. If you'd like to be informed of new episodes and offerings and resources for coaches, sign up for our email list at www.centerforhealthandwellnesscoaches.com. Sending you warmth and light.